Our guest this episode is originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He is a pianist, composer, arranger, sound engineer, accompanist, as well as the music director at a church in Sonoma. He moved to Northern California in 1979 and currently lives in Sebastopol, California. Our guest also works as producer, musician, and sound engineer at his recording studio, J-Dog Studios in Sebastopol. He has both a bachelor's and master's degree in music composition and composes in the genres of jazz and electronics. Our guest is an accomplished soloist and the preferred accompanist for many vocalists and instrumentalists in the Bay Area, as well as the keyboardist for many different rock, dance, and jazz groups. With a multitude of talents and expertise our guest embodies, we are really fortunate that he likes to teach. He's been enthusiastically sharing his knowledge with others through teaching at Sonoma State for 7 years and also at Santa Rosa Junior College for 11. He teaches piano out of his studio in Sebastopol, where, in fact, I've been the lucky recipient of his knowledge, wisdom, and hilarity. We are so pleased to welcome our guest, John Simon. Welcome to Meaningful Musical Conversations, where words are music, hearts are melodies, and harmony is our vision. I'm Jill Meunier.
And I'm Daniel Townsend. How's everyone doing today? Thanks for tuning in today. We have John Simon on our podcast today. John, how are you today?
So far, so good.
We're here to grill you. We'll see.
Okay, good. I didn't do it. I swear I didn't do it. Or maybe I did do it. Wait, let's see. What's the question?
Yeah, we're going to hear about all that later.
What did I not and did I do? Right?
Oh, man. Mm-hmm. Well, I thought today we might just kind of jump in and hear about what you're currently up to, like what you do and what you're currently up to.
Okay.
A wave of panic over your face.
It's like my whole calendar flashed before my eyes. Well, let's see. It's what is it? It's summer's over, fall is beginning.
Yes.
So summer was there. Everything goes in waves because I make my entire 100% of my living as a musician. So to do that, you have to survive doing a lot of things. So I teach, I run a recording studio, and I gig, and I also have a Sunday gig I'm a music director at the local Catholic church in Sonoma. So that's my steadiest gig. And so now the gigs are kind of like starting to thin out slightly. The weddings are pretty much done. All that's left are funerals, and Christmas is a-coming, so that's like the church thing. And so there's more work starting, like people are starting projects in the studio now. I have a couple of, I tend to get people that are like singer-songwriters. They come in and do their projects in the studio, and lots of times they'll come in with, this one lady just came in, she wrote the sweetest song. It's a protest song about the kids in cages at the border. And she wrote this simple little folk song, that's a folk kind of song that is the most heart-wrenching, beautiful little piece of music. And anyway, it was her singing it and me playing the piano, and that's all the further she wanted to go with it. We've been talking about, I can add drums and strings and all that kind of a thing, but we're actually kind of thinking that maybe it's better just to sort of leave it simple, simple and like stark like that, because it's she sings it she has a very beautiful, sweet, semi-untrained voice that's just perfect for the sound of it, and everybody who listens to it, they like get a little get teary. So it's like,
nice.
Wow, that's working.
I would love to hear that.
Working.
Yeah. Well, I think I could show it to you. She would love to. I'm sure she'd be glad to have it promulgated. So
wonderful.
I'll get you a copy of that.
That'd be great.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. So anyway, lots of projects in the studio, and I had a really cool couple of gigs. I'm doing these gigs now up in Ukiah with Paul McCandless.
Oh, yes.
And singer Paula Samante, who I've known since about 83 or something. She's a great singer, lives in Ukiah, and a bassist, Pierre Archain. Do you know him?
I don't.
He's
no.
a really good bass player. He's got this great French accent, and so it's Paul, me, Pierre, and Paula, and we just played at Ravinia Winery last week when it was like 104 degrees or something. That was crazy, but just so much fun to play with people who are listening.
Yeah.
They're listening. Everybody's
wow.
just listening deeply to each other, and it's so gratifying when that happens. Love that. So,
beautiful.
Very, very, Paul is just the great, he's so good at listening. I mean, every little thing, and you have to listen to him too, because there's something going on in his mind that doesn't go on in most people's minds. It's like, oh, you're going there with that,
Yeah, and so maybe we want to tell the listeners about Paul McCandless, and he used to be in the band Oregon, and do you want to say more about
Yeah, he's
briefly?
also currently in a band called Charged Particles, which is down in, they're mostly down in the San Francisco area. Charged Particles. I know the keyboard player is the guy who teaches jazz piano at Stanford. So I guess I'm not going to get to substitute for him anytime soon. And a great drummer who is also a psychologist, so that's dangerous. And then a bass player. So it's like a quartet like that. And also he goes to Germany. He's like, somebody went and saw us at the winery that just had seen him in Germany and somehow followed him to Ukiah.
And he plays.
He plays, right now he's playing mostly soprano and tenor sax, but he also plays English horn, clarinet, bass clarinet, oboe. He's really multi-instrumentalist. So.
Well, that sounds really fulfilling, really exciting for you to be playing with Paul. And,
I
those
love
other
playing with
musicians.
musicians who push me.
Yeah.
And I know they're listening, so that really is just so fun. That's so fun.
Yeah. So what happens when, because we were going to talk a little bit about improvisation and stuff. So do you want to say a little bit about what happens when you're actually playing with musicians who are listening and have that skill to kind of respond? And
Well, from that angle of the interaction with the other musicians, it's listening. It's really, and leaving room open for them to say something too. Sometimes it can be a nervous habit to just fill in everything, and sometimes it takes a little bit of guts to not play something, to just hold back. And I notice in bands, actually, my experience is if I want people to get more involved in the music in the band, like to get the band more like cohesive, is to play less, because then they'll start to go, oh, there's room. Oh, I could do this. And they get more, if you play a lot all the time, then they're like, oh, well, he's got that covered. And they kind of withdraw a little bit. They sit back and say, well, he's just got it covered. I'm just going to hang loose and think about my dental appointment or something. Yeah. Or they're, just go away. They'll just go away. Yeah. And so when you play less, they'll hear this space and they'll go, they'll hear the music in their heads of something that comes up that they could do, and they'll contribute.
Yes.
So you kind of draw people in by stepping back a little bit and trapping them in a way. It's a little open trap. Like there's nothing going on. It's safe to come in, and then they come in like that. And then you can start selectively responding, and you have to really be able to, it's like a psychological thing, because it depends on each musician's own psychological makeup, I guess, how they respond, and how what kind of a conversation you can have. It's just like having a conversation with anyone, when you're talking to somebody, you can get a sense of, oh, he's got a lot to say, he doesn't have much to say, oh, he's a little bit shy, or she, or you just get a sense of what's going on. And that's kind of like the fun part, is to suss that out, to try to figure out what's going on here, and what have we got here. Are they are they listening too? And
Yeah.
I mean, they might be disappointingly going, oh, this is a time for me to show off and watch me do this, you know? In which case, you just be patient and kind of like, that was nice, go, here you go, you know, and hopefully they'll play themselves out. And that's usually a sign of nervousness. So hopefully they'll all calm down because you want everybody to settle as much as possible with each other so that we're all kind of, you know, level out at some kind of a equality where like everyone feels like they're part of the same thing. And sometimes it works, sometimes, you know, not so good, but, you know, that's the goal.
Yes.
That's the goal. So when you're improvising in terms of other people and your interactions with other people, there's that. But there's also the thing that's going on in your own head that's kind of independent of that in a way. And one aspect of that is looking ahead and trying to see where you know, listen. It's sort of like you're taking dictation, I was going to say, but like you're transcribing what it is that you're getting in from the ether, like wherever that comes from, you just get an idea of. Sometimes it's like, oh, this sounds like I'm beginning to see the light, so I'll play a little. You know, you could be funny, or it could be you just get an idea. You hear a melody, you hear something that's going, or what some other person just played, and you start hearing that, and you know that when it's your turn, you know what you're going to follow. You got an idea what you're going to follow that with because you're hearing it along with him or her too.
Yes.
And so there's a little bit of planning ahead in terms of being aware of what the tune is, how you know. The structure of the tune. There's all the technical stuff like, you know, what chord is this? How do you play it? What other ways are there to play it? What scales go along with that chord? What are interesting things that you could do with alternate blah, blah, blah? You know, all that little technical shit that's going on. Can I say shit?
Yes, you can say all the swear words you want.
Good. So that stuff. And then on top of that, but that's like, you can't get caught in that because then you become you're just spitting out technical shit. You know,
as
you're
opposed
just
to music.
You're great. It's just all, and then it's just kind of like a little harmony test or something like, and it becomes showing off. Then you know, oh, watch me do this. How fast I can play this arpeggio. You know, and that kind of thing. Right. And but there's that, and then there's the thing coming in from the ether, which is like, what do I hear? And then you go, what do I hear? That sounds like. It's that scale. I wonder if it is. So you try it and you go, oh, nope, that wasn't that. What did I just do? Oh, well, in that case, and then you have to spin on the moment and go, oh, I didn't do what I thought I was going to do, but I did do this, and that sounds interesting because that makes me think of something else.
Yeah.
So you really are kind of like spinning on a dime almost instantaneously with the background. The only thing that's holding it all together is the tune. Yeah. So there's the structure of the tune and your technical knowledge and I guess your own technical abilities.
Yes.
You know what you can or cannot do. Sometimes I hear something that's like, yeah, right, let's not try that, but let's try an approximation of that or whatever, So it's combining all of those things and all that has to happen when you're thinking ahead, but at the same time being present and listening to what's going on. That's why I love it, because there's just so much going on. I don't have time to, if I go to a gig, I don't want to drink. I don't have time for a drink.
Yeah.
I got too much to do. If I get I'll have a beer maybe at the last set at the end and sip on it slowly, but I can't afford to lose any bit of my mental facilities because, if I'm playing especially if I'm playing with really great musicians like Paul or other people, like that's insulting to them to not be at, at least at the best that I can be, whatever that might be,
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So it's fun.
It's
It's fun.
And it just requires all of you. And
it requires your chemical makeup too. Like I have to think, especially if I have a big show, what have I eaten? Have I had too much coffee or do I need more coffee? Am I properly hydrated? Sleep.
Huge.
Huge.
Are your clothes comfortable?
Are my clothes comfortable?
Can I breathe in this?
What's going on in the room? Because that could be a distraction. And how are you going to handle what's going on in the room? Or it can actually also, in some cases, enhance it. But most of the time, it's a distraction. Because
say more about that.
well,
like if people are talking or
yeah,
clinking.
unfortunately, the most common place to play is not in a concert situation. I love concert situations, but that's like a sit down and shut up type of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody understands that's the agreement. Sit down and shut up and listen. But very rare does that happen. It's more like it's a cocktail reception at a wedding, right?
Totally.
And we're gonna play. They want background jazz. Okay, they don't care what we're doing as long as it sounds, doesn't interfere with their conversation. It has, you have to think of what the purpose of the room is. So the room comes into play from this point of view that, if like you're playing a cocktail reception during the wedding, don't play Chameleon or Freedom Jazz Dance or, out there stuff. Don't play Michael Brecker. You want Ellington, Bill Evans, it's got to fit into the vibe of the room. That's part of my job. It might be, if I'm playing, sometimes I used to play at Brannan's Grill in Calistoga before it closed down. And they had a nice grand piano there, but they don't want me, it's not a damn concert. They want me to enhance their dinner, fill in the spaces between the conversation, and stay out of the way. So it's kind of an ambient thing in a lot of ways.
Totally.
And so you have to understand that's what you're hired to do. Be professional about it and just don't say, yeah, but I do this killer version of, Thelonious Monk.
They don't care. Yeah.
No, it's not time for that.
Right.
So the room can fit into that. Also, maybe there, I play a lot over at Main Street Station in Guerneville, which is more of a wide open jazz club. People come there to listen, but also people come there just to eat good Italian food and talk to each other and have their own time. And so that's a dual purpose. Right. So to some people, we're nothing. We're like background music. We're kind of equal to the football game that's going on in the bar. But other people, they're sitting real close and they want to be stimulated. Yeah. They want to. What are you going to do? What's going to happen? They're really interested in the drama.
Yeah, that's cool. A cool venue.
Yeah. It's a cool venue. It's a lot of fun. And so, but you have to sort of semi-tune it out too. You can't be just, you could get distracted by somebody's birthday party or somebody saying stuff or whatever like that. And Herbie Hancock said, it's all about focus. I thought that was one of the best things I ever heard. When you're improvising, it's all about focus. And so it's like a meditation. Yeah. And if you're meditating, one of the things they tell you is if your mind wanders, you just bring it back. Right. You don't judge it. You don't say, oh, damn it, I did it again. And why do I always do this? But you just like, oh, you did that again. Okay, back to here. And you just reset.
You let go.
Nice. You let go, reset, and go back. Like that. Right. So that's part of the idea of, well, really any kind of performance. My classical music teacher told me, if you make a mistake, make the next note so good that they forget the mistake that you made. And what she means is reset, refocus, and get back on track immediately. You don't have time to oh no.
Right.
I'm no good. I'm exposed. I am a fraud. Oh, Jesus, get me out of here. All that shit that comes up.
Yeah.
It's just distraction. And it may be true, but it's still a distraction. Just get back on track and as fast as you can get back into it. Like
and
that.
I from a personal experience with you, John, actually, because you were my teacher at Santa Rosa JC when I was taking applied music. But what I was about to say is that for me, it's taken me some time to actually get better at letting go of that, because you witnessed when I was doing a jury where I was performing The Nearness of You, and I had been And I had been playing that for hours and hours a day, and especially like right before it, came up. And I just wanted to do such a good job. And there was one particular person in the room I wanted to impress.
You want to impress, right? Mm-hmm.
Oh my God! And then when I heard myself like make a mistake right off the bat,
was that me? You were trying to impress me? No.
I know you love me. I have nothing to prove to you.
No, right? Exactly. I'm permanently not impressed. Wait, that came out wrong.
I'm learning I have nothing to prove anyway, but back then it was like I had this little thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And with one of the teachers.
It's a real distraction when that happens.
Yeah. It was.
It's and ironically, having practiced it so much helps and hinders at the same time. Isn't that weird?
Exactly. Yes. And
why do you think that is?
Why is that? That's a really good question. And I haven't done any any scientific experiments on it. Right. But no, I just.
I wonder.
It's an interesting question.
It is like, over preparation, or what they call over preparation. I think one of the things maybe is that it sets up an expectation in your mind of all the times that you've played the nearness of you. Mm-hmm. That now you have, especially if you're just about to go in to play it officially. That you have all these ideas of, I remember I did that really well, and that was really good. And now you're playing it, and you go, I didn't do it. Oh, that wasn't it. Oh, that wasn't as good. And
right, exactly. And, am I going to make this mistake that I make several times before?
Oh, right.
But, actually, what I do when I'm, in trouble with things a lot, and I'm like confused and I'm looking for guidance, I find a book. So I actually found a great book called Playing and Practicing from the Heart. And in this book, and it's for different kinds of musicians, but she actually gives techniques about how to practice specifically with different instruments. But a good part of it was about the piano. And one of the things that she said, and this actually just has to do with what you were just talking about, that a lot of times when we're practicing, or let me just say, sometimes when people, you probably don't do this, but when people are practicing, they're playing, and even though it might be intentional practice, deliberate practice, working on something, they're aware that they're practicing, and they're kind of going just a little bit by rote, and they're not fully engaged with the process of being present and enjoying it. And so she says that when you're practicing, you need to have the same kind of attention and presence that you would when you get up on a stage. Because there's this weird thing that happens when you're practicing and you're just playing and you're, just going along. Then all of a sudden you're like on stage and you're like, okay, this is the important moment right here. And you're not used to being in that state.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So,
you don't practice that.
Exactly. So she says practice that all the time. So actually I started doing that, and especially when I had to play in combos, and I was like freaking, even before I went to the JC, and I used to go and attend these combos because I wanted to, watch the performances. I'd sit in my chair and I would like fantasize about being up there. And the moment I would start to fantasize about playing the piano up there with a combo, my heart would race. And that was it. I was like filled with adrenaline. But anyway, so I had to learn that. I had read that book before going up on combo. So my whole thing was, I'm just present. This moment is no more important than the last moment. And it actually really helped me relax and get over those moments when I made a mistake, or when our special guest was soloing and I'm comping, and I was like, ooh, oh my God, I just got distracted, and where am I? And just come back and listen. So anyway, it's such a thing. Like,
it's a thing. It's a really interesting. That's one of the neatest things about improvised music, is you deal with all of that. But I think you also deal with that in more formal classical music too. But I was going to say that because there's the attention to what's coming up, and there is the awareness of what you're doing. You were a lot more highly structured in classical music. There's like, you have to play pretty much the little dots that are on the page, and that's it.
Exactly.
You know,
Right.
there's a lot of ways to play them differently. You can vary slightly the tempo, but only slightly. You know, you really are a lot more in a straitjacket like that, which is probably why I was not that interested in doing that. But anyway, I forgot what I was going to say about that. So just
we were just
edit that out.
a straitjacket. Yeah,
But yes, you're in a straitjacket in that type of situation. But you were talking about being
present
in a combo. And what?
forgetting your place, and then
Like
and
now? Like that?
Yes.
Just come back.
Oh my God, you got me giggling again. Oh, that's one of the great things I have to say about you as a teacher, because, you know, I've taken private lessons with you, and oh my God, John, you make it so enjoyable. I mean, this
it's
is just
fun.
like a little diversion here, but
Thanks.
you know, you really do. I always feel so safe around you and never embarrassed. I mean, maybe my first lesson because, you know, I was just scared. But
the more you get familiar with each other, the less. Yeah, because I always remember having a lesson just was it a week ago with another a student, and she was playing, and she was like playing this part of the song where she had a solo in it, and it was my comment was, you know what? You just kind of went away. You weren't present. I mean, I like to approach the music more from a heart, emotion type of point of view, a psychological maybe point of view, because I think that's even more important than how you're voicing a minor 7 chord.
yeah,
I mean, you need to know how to do some of that, but it's more like where are you in it? You know, and I think people sometimes go away and they get lost in the technicalities of stuff, or maybe they were afraid of all this technicalities, and oh God, here it comes, and that makes you go away. You know, like what you're talking about at the jury. You know, where it's like you're just you freak out just because you say to yourself, "Oh, this is the moment."
exactly.
Which actually is you going away.
Exactly.
You're not in the music anymore.
There you
You're
go.
in this is the moment.
Exactly.
Which is just like, that has nothing to do with anything.
Exactly.
You know?
Yes.
So that's the interesting thing about all music, including classical music, but especially improvised, you're really on the line because there's not even a piece of paper to fall back on except maybe a lead sheet, but it's pretty minimal.
Right.
I remember what I was going to say, is that in terms of practicing, a lot of people, when they're practicing, also prepare what they're going to play as a, quote, improvisation.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right?
Like they'll write out a solo and then like learn it.
There's some famous people who, I mean, it's actually rather surprising. Dave Brubeck was famous for this.
Really?
His solos from concert to concert tended to be almost the same thing because he would practice what he was going to play and make it sound like an improvisation. A lot of people do that. And the advantage of that is that it's well played, you know, and it's especially somebody who's really creative and has got a great, you know, like Brubeck or any of the, you know, some of those guys. They know exactly what they're going to do. So it's played almost without a mistake, if maybe perhaps none at all. Yeah. So it's beautifully composed. It sounds brilliant. And then you go back to another concert, and it's like, oh my God, it's the same fucking solo, you know? And then you realize, so not to say that that's bad, but that is one thing that people do. And it's kind of like the classical approach, really. It's like, I'm going to play the second movement of this Beethoven sonata. I know what I'm going to do. I know what my fingering is. And the same thing, I'm going to improvise. It's my turn to improvise over this song, and I know what I'm going to do, and here it is, and it's all worked out. That's not necessarily a negative thing, but it's not what I'm interested in.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm with you on that.
I tend to actually, a little bit, because I'm holding out for something different, I wind up also, understandably, shooting myself in the foot, because if you're going to be on the edge. And if you don't know what you're going to do, sometimes you're going to crash and burn.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to lose focus and you're going to go, oh, I thought I was in this other part of the song. Oh, shit, that's not it. Or it's you something,
Right.
or you're going to be uninspired and nothing, you know?
I was going to actually ask you about that because that used to happen to me quite a bit, and occasionally would happen where I'm improvising something and I'm doing something really new for me, and the next thing I know, I'm lost. And so how do you stay, or especially as a vocalist as well? All of a sudden, I'm like coming back, and I'm like coming back to the bridge, like, oh my God, where's that lyric?
Well, that's thinking ahead. There's that little thing of knowing what's coming, which is really hard to do when you're also doing something else, and you have to think, what is the lyric coming up?
Yeah.
Like that, right? When you got music in front of you, it really helps because you can look a couple bars ahead and you can remind yourself.
Right.
But yeah, it does happen to me sometimes where you can get lost in some permutation of something, and you're out in this beautiful permutation, and meanwhile the music keeps going. And it's four measures down the line, and that chord's no longer there, and all of a sudden you go, oh God, where are we now? What?
Yeah, exactly.
It's sort of like, what was I saying? What was I saying? So you have to, part of the skill of it is to be out there and be conscious of what you're doing, but also be conscious of, I'm going to have to land in about 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to land right there on a C minor chord. So, not real important yet because we still got 8 bars to go, but keep in mind, or we're at the bridge coming up to you have to have that little thing going on too. It's a hard thing to do. And that's, I think, why a lot of people practice their solos ahead of time, so they don't have to deal with that so much, or they outline it to some degree, so they have some outline. I'm against that. I don't care. And
You're wild, John.
I don't give a shit. I just want to. It's not that interesting to me to do that.
I am so with you on that. I am so
I did that. That's why I stopped. I got a master's degree in music, and it was all like I was at College of Music at Temple, and at the time, jazz was not considered a subject suitable for academic pursuit. And this was this was back in the 70s, and it's a terrific college. And now they have a really great jazz program. But when I was there, no. That's only dead white European guys, or if you're a composition major, living white European guys. But that's it. And so jazz was not considered. So I just got, it just became a little bit too constricted to me. So my reaction to that is, I don't want to know what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
I want to know the tune. I like to know the tune that I, studied and understand certain things about the tune, but I don't know what I'm going to do. It's a different. I know what the tune is. I might know, and the melody. That really helps inform what you're going to do. A lot of times when people improvise, they forget that there's a melody going on, and they're out in, outer Jupiter doing something, which is all very interesting, but kind of irrelevant, and to some degree also, and it will lose the audience because the audience likes to be part of what's going on. They like to feel like, oh, I know I'm kind of hip to what's going on. So you got to feed it to the audience a little bit of melody every now and then, just like a little, and then you kind of go back to the rest of the artist review, just to let them know that's the bridge, and okay, bye, But then they're more with you and they get more engaged in the music too, which is a whole other question about what turns people on. It's a very big mystery to me. But I don't care. I don't want to be prepared in terms of what I'm actually going to play. I don't want to do that. I won't do it. I never play anything the same way twice. I warn people. I don't do that, So lots of times in my studio, I'll have vocalists come in and they want me to make them rehearsal tracks. Right. I've worked for a number of vocal teachers who would have, student recitals. And they would come into my studio and they would sing along with me, and I would record just me playing the piano, and then they'd take that home as like kind of a karaoke track to practice to, and they felt like they were prepared to sing. So, that's helpful. But then we're at the recital, and they're going, what are you doing? I was waiting for you to play that little something. I have no idea what I did. That was 3 weeks ago, dude, you know?
Right.
So, I have learned that I need to warn them ahead of time. Look, it's not going to sound like this. It'll be the same amount of time.
Yeah.
The same music will go by, but I may not do exactly what I just did like that.
Right.
So, people expect that sometimes out of it. But anyway, I don't like that, and I will tend to just avoid that. But then I wind up then sometimes sounding sloppy because it is. I will make a mistake, or I will go someplace that, like, oops, that wasn't right, because I'm trying something. I'm striving or stretching or whatever. So part of that, what comes along with that is there's going to be more mistakes. There's going to be more little. Two play. I intend to play one note, but two get hit or whatever like that. Too bad.
Yeah,
That I prefer to sound a little sloppy and a lot more creative and open than to sound perfect and controlled, but bored to tears.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Well, I think this is what makes you such an interesting person, as well as an interesting musician, an exciting person to listen to. And I've heard you in a number of different situations. And actually, one of those situations I'm thinking of where it was a jazz jam. And you were the piano player for the jazz jam. And there was, I don't remember who was playing, but I think it was an instrumentalist. And I remember that this was kind of a new player. And maybe this person maybe had even a hard time following the chart a little bit, or was playing some very unusual notes. And I remember being so struck and moved by how you supported that person by doing these little mimics, that's not exactly
Hints?
the right word, but hints, or even just like little reflections. Like maybe it sounded like this person had just made like a quote mistake. I know that really technically there are no mistakes, but you would do this little thing to make it sound like it was meant to be.
Oh yeah.
And so I've heard you support people that way. You're very generous,
Thanks.
a very generous musician.
Thanks. Well, we all have to, if we're all in it together, I hate being in a situation where somebody tries to, have the biggest dick, or to be dominant like that. I hate that. It's just not fun for anyone, and it doesn't draw us in. I mean, whatever skill level you're at, if I'm on a stage with you, we're here, let's do it together.
Yeah.
And if you need a little bit of help, well, I feel that way. Also, I think that one of my favorite things to do is to be an accompanist.
Yeah.
That's like almost my wheelhouse is that. And it's because I really like the interaction between two people co-creating, as opposed to listen to me, here I go for 15 minutes. It's a lot more collaborative, and I that just turns me on.
Yeah.
That turns me on. So when you're with accompanying a vocalist, you sometimes they need a little bit of support, some help, either in what's the next note, or maybe it's time for them to come in after you've played a little improvisation, and they come in, say, at the middle of the tune at the bridge, and I just might have a feeling like, I don't think they know that the bridge is about to come up,
Yeah.
Then I will draw back on what I'm playing and start to get right down to play the tune that leads into the bridge, the part of the tune. So they'll go, okay. And then they come in like that. That's my job, to support them like that. And also to try to get into their heads. It's an intimate thing, which I like, I mean, actually, my ex-wife is a singer. And I think that's how we got together, it started with the intimacy of me being her accompanist. And I was in her head. I mean, it's intimate. I mean, it's making love. It's kind of, on a professional level. Yeah. And I'm getting paid. Wait a minute, what is this? it really is kind of like, you're getting into their heads and you're trying to figure out where are they going and how are they feeling. Oh, they're getting this means something to them. They need this support, we're getting big. Oh, I can feel that they're tending to want to slow down a little bit. Okay, slow down with them, Oh, they're making this mistake and they're going to this part of the song. Okay, we're going, honey. Yeah, okay, we're going. I'm with you, that, turn over, fine, okay, whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's, it's to serve the vocalist. And I really like that, because then at the end, you come out with like a nice little glow, It's like you need to smoke a cigarette or it's like, hey, so is that good for you? And all legal, all entirely legal. Yeah. Nobody got hurt.
In front of audiences.
I'm sure the audience enjoys it.
Yeah. Right. We're all in perfect health still, right?
Yeah.
Safe sex.
It's like, thanks, completely safe. And probably a lot more intimate than a lot of sex, right? So.
Well, perhaps that leads us to another topic.
Oh, really? Uh-oh. What might that be? Yeah. Till? Do tell.
How about or hot springs?
Oh. Well.
So tell our audience what or.
You didn't mean that, I'm sure. You'll fix that in the mix.
What or hot springs is. We live in Northern California.
That's
over
right,
here.
Dude.
And my husband and I used to go there all the time.
Did you?
And so, yes, and then I found out that you were actually the founder or the owner.
Not the founder, but I was one of the owners.
One of the owners,
yes,
okay.
Yeah. Actually, there was a guy who lived there with me, and he was a photographer, and he took a whole lot of pictures of us when we were living there, and all fully clothed. And I just ran into him actually at this gig that I was doing with Paul McCandless, and wow. I said to Seth, I don't have any photographs of, I wish I had some pictures from that time. And he just mailed me a DVD. And so like last night, I was on the computer flipping through and I'm like, oh my God, look at my hair. It's like completely brown, and cool. Stuff. But yeah, or Hot Springs was a great idea for me. So to set it up, I guess it's a beautiful hot springs resort in Mendocino County, just outside of Ukiah, on the Ore Springs Road between Ukiah and Mendocino, 707-462-6277. I still remember the phone number.
Wow.
And it's the greatest. It's very, very beautiful. They've got hot tubs and a sauna and a beautiful mineral swimming pool. And there are a number of hot springs resorts in Northern California that are really cool. Harbin, which unfortunately had a bad damage from the fires. Wilbur, and Orr. So it's really those three are like the triumvirate of Northern California hot springs, I think. There's other ones there, but those are like the best ones.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I was in San Francisco, and this was in 81, and I was making a lot of money as a temp running the word processing department of the Pacific Telephone. And long story, but I wound up being, as a temp, in charge of the entire word processing operation for the telephone company at one point, and made quite a lot of money for that time. And so my then wife, we wanted to take a little vacation, and she wanted to go go visit hot springs resort. So she did the planning, being a Virgo, and she did this great plan, and we did this wonderful trip, and we went to Harbin, and we went to Wilbur, and then we wound up at Orr, and we were sitting around, and Orr was so beautiful, and it turned out that we were sitting in a pool with somebody who was one of the owners, and I said, this place is so beautiful. How do you get to live here? And the lady said, well, as a matter of fact, we have a share in the business that happens to be open. One of the people who are a part of the community or moving out, would you be interested in buying the share for, I think it was $7,500. I was like, whoa, yes.
Wow.
So we moved from San Francisco to Ore Springs in 82. And my thought was that it was my retirement plan because the business pays for itself. All I was going to have to buy was not clothing, really. Not really.
Not
really.
Pretty
Not high on the list. Maybe new sneakers every now and then. That's it. And food. And everything else, the electricity and I guess I have to pay for my own firewood. But I mean, pretty much live in a cabin in the woods. It was like perfect because then I could be a musician and didn't have to worry about making money.
Yeah.
And that kind of a thing. And so it was really, really fun. And it was some of the most formative, wonderful times of my life there. It was just really 6 years or something. It wasn't very long, really, but it really, really is still, that place is like a home to me. And I would I had a little Fender Rhodes piano and I would set it up out on the lawns on a Saturday evening around dinner time and set up speakers on opposite far ends of the lawn. And I had my Rhodes and I had two little chorusers, so it would kind of swirl the sound around.
Cool.
And I'd improvise. And sometimes I'd play semi-jazz, but sometimes I would just hear the rooster crow, and then I would sometimes the rooster and I had a little back and forth.
my
It was
gosh.
pretty interesting. It's like, really? How about this? And he's like, so anyway.
Nice.
Yeah, right. How about that?
Yeah.
So anyway, that was just absolutely wonderful. Except that and then that's where I met Paula Samonte, and I did have a band that was in Ukiah, but it was like a 30-minute drive to get to Ukiah every time I wanted to go to a rehearsal. One way, 30 minutes on a windy country road, and it was just there wasn't enough music out there unless I wanted to play, Mexican music. There's plenty of that, or country music, plenty of that. But jazz, I would either have to drive an hour on what that time was a dirt road to Mendocino and play at the Seagull. That was the jazz venue out there. Or drive about a half an hour or longer to go to Ukiah or Hopland and play down there. So it was just not enough.
Yeah, I hear you.
So it was like, oh, well, that's... really, the music was, I'm more of an urban guy. Even though I love the country and love living in the country, I kind of need to be around the city. I need to be there because that's where the culture is. That's where the musicians are.
Right.
So wound up in 86 having to leave and, deciding to leave. Didn't have to, but I decided to leave and came back down to Sonoma County. So, but yeah, Ore Springs, man, it's the best. I still...
Great place.
Go there anytime I could go.
I gotta look that place up.
Look it up.
I'm checking
Ore
it
Springs,
out.
yeah.
It's here. So
Or Hot
might as
Springs,
well.
yeah.
Is that when you started doing the film music and arranging? Did you start doing that out there? When did that start for you?
No, I did film music. I wrote music for a film when I was in music school in Philly.
Oh, okay.
And that was about 78. And I hooked up with this guy who was making a film in the film department at Temple, and he needed somebody to help write music. And it was a documentary based on the life of Frank Furness, who is an architect. He's an architect who's really big around the 20s, in the 20s. And so it was about his life. And he was kind of a crazy iconoclastic guy. And so I wrote things for, I was in the music school, so I had access to all these great musicians, top-notch. So I wrote things for a string quartet. I wrote things for a brass, quintet, or I can't remember how many players. And I wrote these scores out, and I recorded it, and gave it to the film guy, and he says, "Okay, come on into the editing room with me," and he chopped the thing into smithereens because it's a film.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh my baby, it was really hard. It was like, really, that's just the climax. No, don't need it. So it was really kind of a lesson.
Yeah.
There was a lesson there in that, but Temple. I was in the composition department. And I was a composition major. And the reason why I chose Temple University, the College of Music at Temple in the first place, was because I was really, truly interested in electronic music.
Okay.
My dad worked for Univac, and he invented some of the first computers. Wow. And so I had a lot of experience. I kind of had a little bit of the techno thing like my dad, had. I had some great summer jobs working on these, in their computer world headquarters, testing out their new computers. And I was just like a grunt walking around and changing tapes on those tape machines. It was really fun. But anyway, I really got into switched on Bach.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
I remember that.
Walter at the time, Carlos. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And so when I was graduating from high school, and I knew I wanted to be a musician because that made me popular with the girls. So that's definitely want to keep going with that. And I was getting the tour at the College of Music, and there was this room that the chairman of the composition department was walking me by, and I said, "What's in that room?" He goes, "Oh, that's our synthesizer lab. Nobody uses it." I'm like, "Oh, what? Can I take a look?" And so he turns on, and there was this giant Moog synthesizer. It was like the entire wall was like patch cords, and I'm like, "Oh my God," and tape decks but nobody was using it. And the guy says, "Oh yeah, nobody's using this. It's not even hooked up right now. There's nobody doing." And I said, "But and he goes, slow down, son." He said, first get your undergraduate degree. Once you get your undergrad degree, come back to me and talk about it.
Oh, my.
So, all right, I was a good boy. I studied Scarlatti and Bach and Beethoven and Debussy and all those guys and loved it, but always had my eye on what was going on down there in the basement in that room. Yeah. So after I got my bachelor's, I said, okay, I got this idea. I'll put your studio together. You give, and the deal was they gave me a little office, a small monthly stipend, and free tuition to get my master's degree. And I run the studio and teach classes in the studio because then they would get enrollments. So it was profitable for the university to get it. So,
you're brilliant.
That was their angle on it. And so I did. So one summer I went in there with my soldering iron. My dad taught me how to do all that. So I put together the studio, made switch patch bays and stuff. And come September, it was up and running. And time to register for classes for my master's degree thing and a master's program. And so my wife at the time was not in a job that she liked very much, but she was like, "Okay, you can get your master's degree. It kind of makes sense. All right, do it. So John, how many credits did you register for this? 2. I'm not gonna rush this. I'm thinking I could be on this thing for about 5-7 years. She's like, "Get your ass back down there. You're out in 2 years." So I was like, "Oh, crap." So I made the best of it, and so I really loved it, and it really opened up my eyes and ears and mind to what the synthesizer was all about. And this was the early 70s, so they had just attached a keyboard to it.
Okay.
That was almost like putting a bit in the bridle in a horse's thing, because originally synthesizers are not meant to be playing tonal, harmonic, functional harmony.
Really?
Nope.
Well, remember that that album that came out that was called Moog Power?
No, I don't know that one.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah, I bought a lot of those albums. Yeah.
Well, it was a Moog synthesizer, actually.
That was kind of hip in like the 70s.
Yeah, I think
you could buy these in the record store. I had one called the Copper-Plated Integrated Circuit, another one called the Age of Electronicus, and it was these there was one that was switched on Backrack, switched on Backrack, and it was all like, right. And just weird. But I would play that stuff up in my room, and I kind of was just entranced by it. But when I got to when I got into the studio, I realized that there's so much that's implied by the synthesizer that it really implies a whole other kind of music that for the first time has nothing to do with 12 chromatic tones with dominant and chords or any of that stuff. It has nothing to do with that. It implies another method of expressing yourself without using notes and harmony. I mean, up to this point, really, all music and all instruments, instruments it really comes down to the voice. I mean, that's the first instrument. And all instruments are generally designed to play single tones or maybe, or discrete tones, one or more at the same time, but they're discrete. So a piano, maybe up to 10 or whatever, but, a cello, maybe 3 at a time, or, but they're always discrete tones.
What do you mean by discrete?
A note, a C, an E, an individual pitch. That's the point of them, is to create a pitch. And then the whole system revolves around how does this pitch relate to that pitch?
Right,
Yes.
of course.
Right? And then you have a whole system of harmony that developed from the, the 15 or 1400s all the way up to what we got now. Right. And then really, if you look at it, when they were really pushing the question in the 20th century, Stravinsky was into, he was like doing things where he would write things that were in 2 keys at the same time, and then what about Ives, where he would have like 3 pieces of music simultaneously happening, to people like Webern, where they were trying to come up with, like the whole 12-tone thing, where they were trying to get away with in most cases, avoiding the interactions between individual tones in the traditional way where like something has a note and then you hear its fifth or an octave and you hear the relationship between those pitches. Right. You can't avoid it because it's a physical reality. I mean, it's physics, folks, so you can't get away. But they really tried to by saying, no, what we're going to do is we're going to play this series of 12 notes, and that is the row, and we can take that row and you can play it backwards, forwards, you can cut it in half and play parts, but it's the row. But the problem with that is you are still condemned to the fact that you're playing instruments that were designed to play individual pitches that and it was all designed around a system of harmony that you can't escape.
Yeah.
You'd have people like Ligeti who, would start, using other kinds of, microtones between the notes and sound effects and things like that. Like think of the movie 2001. And remember they're walking up to the monolith and on the moon and you hear these.
Yeah.
That's Ligeti.
Okay.
That's Ligeti. And so I sung some of that actually when in school. It was so cool, but in a choir. But that still you are stuck with individually tone-producing instruments. The synthesizer is the first time you don't have that, where you don't create tones, you create timbres, colors, sounds, and so it implies another language. And the question is, if you take away the relationships that are in harmony. No more 1 and 5 chords, no G's or D minors or anything. What have you got left? What's left? How do you do it? And that's what the synthesizer asks that question. What is the system? What kind of system of meaning can you get? How can you make music that has meaning if you don't have a melody or chords or all that stuff? Then what's left? What is left? That's the question.
That is a fascinating question. And I'm thinking to myself, because I haven't listened to tons of electronic music, especially I think the kind that you're talking about. But so I guess one of the things that I love about, regular music, not the kind that you're talking about, is the emotions that you feel. So I'm wondering, with that kind,
how do you do
it? So you're talking about meaning. Do you also mean like that makes you feel something?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
Yeah,
and see, that's the problem. Is functional harmony has a big head start. We really know how to make something sound sad or to create tension. Because we know all the little mechanics and the tricks in harmony that could do that. But and it's a system that is well established, and it's a language that everybody understands.
And the relationship, I mean, it's interesting when you talk about relationships between the notes, because I can't help but to think about relationships between people and energies and how it's like a kind of a form of chemistry, and it makes something new out of, these elements that we put together. So I'm thinking about I'm really wanting to hear more about your electronic music and how, if there are, you're putting timbres together or on top of each other, or
and what does that? How can you make a timbre mean something? How can you make it if you don't have a minor chord? What would you have that you could create that would give a feeling of sadness?
Yeah, I'm so curious.
How would you do that, right? And I think the language is in its infancy right now. It's the answer is not there, but I can tell you where the answers are coming from. It's coming from it's kind of happening sort of under the radar in a lot of ways, but it's coming from movies and commercials on TV.
Really?
Yes.
Say more.
Yeah. So think of The Arrival. Remember the movie The Arrival? It's this big blimp thing that came down and they were trying to communicate with the aliens.
I didn't see it.
All right. Well, they used the guy who wrote the stuff wrote non-pitch oriented electronic music to give a sense of fear, massiveness, and so the sounds that he used were actually aided by the visual, and we were kind of reverse engineered into thinking, oh my God, something very mysterious and big and kind of frightening, and that's the music. Therefore, we learn this language that probably means this. And so there are already in our language, certain sounds that mean certain things. Listen to car commercials. And like that, there's that Lincoln ad with Matthew McConaughey where they're all driving through the colored dust now, right? Listen to when they're all swirling around in the colored dust, there's a lot of rolls of cymbals and things going on in there. It's not a tune.
Yeah.
It's a thing that is subtly in there that it's expressing danger and mystery and what's going on. Those kinds of things are what are creating the language or starting to build the building blocks of the language that we are going to have to, it's not been codified. Like harmony is very highly codified. There's rules and we could talk about them. You got a minor 7 flat 5 and that means you're going to play a scale over that or a Lydian blah, blah, None of that exists right now. It's just sort of, it's a little bit more wide open right now, which is very exciting. It's just a very exciting time to be at the beginnings of the development of this language. Now, unfortunately, what people are also doing with the synthesizers is they're taking advantage of this other thing that they can do, which is they can imitate acoustic sounding instruments. So, like we were just talking about your Nord, you have these great sounds. They have like great string sounds, horns, clarinets, things like that. So the synthesizer has been saddled and weighed down and sort of trained like I think of it as like a bit and a bridle in a horse. That it's trained to like make this sound. It sounds like a trumpet now. And it's kind of cool because it's economically feasible. Now you don't have to hire 18 trumpet players. You've got this fantastic, or you can sound like, some rock, musician sounded in the 80s when he played some kind of Guns N' Roses tune or whatever. There's certain things that synthesizers are used that are used in a harmonic context. Yeah. This is not what I'm talking about. Yeah. And it actually is an unfortunate side effect, in my opinion.
Interesting.
I mean, I use it. I've got several synthesizers, plus a ton of plugins, and a lot of them are like, listen to this choir and listen to these strings, I've got all those things, and I love them, and for certain purposes, they're fine, but that's not the point, I think, in my opinion, of what the potential of electronic music is. It's the scary unknown part is what if you don't have these harmonies? What do you do then? What's left? How do you do it? Part of the answer is rhythm. because that still happens. And you have to have rhythm in any kind of expression. There's rhythm in how you talk and how you play any instrument. It's the key of, well, a big key to expression is how it occurs in time. How quickly or how slow, when you put a stop, when you start talking again, all those things create a feeling, emotions, so rhythm.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to a beat, but also to a beat. So currently I'm kind of like trying to educate myself whenever I can about all the rhythmic software that I got now, you know, just learning all the things, you know, like there's a piece called Stylus. There's a piece of software called Stylus that really seems to have a lot of, there's one called Ultra Beat that's in Logic. You know, there's some things that you can really tweak and put sounds in there that you can put maybe timbral sounds and the drum thing establishes when the sound happens. So you might not be hearing the sound of a snare drum or a kick drum. Maybe you're hearing the sound of some kind of weird timbre, but it occurs in time, maybe in a beat that you can dance to, you know, for starters.
Yeah.
So that's kind of accessible, and people are doing that. There's a, what's it called, Mr. Bill. On SoundCloud, I ran into this guy, Mr. Bill. Oh, he's fantastic. Check it out.
Okay.
But anyway, that's one answer is that I just because you've gotten rid of the harmony doesn't mean you can't have whatever kind of relatable rhythm, you know. I did a piece once though, I used rhythm. One of the things, I kind of stripped that down. This was my, it was part of my thesis, master's thesis, as a matter of fact, is I took I split it down. I took a loop of a tape loop of a sound that I made. And I had an 8-track tape recorder, and I recorded the loop for about 15 minutes. Then I cut a 1/4 inch off of the loop, reattached it, started again, and played it again. Cut another 1/4 inch, played it again. So in the end, I had 8 loops of the same thing, but they were going out of sync with each other, right? And then my job was to find the places in time where any 2 loops would come together. And the thought is that the thing that creates anticipation in this situation is 2 things that go fast until it's together. And then you get there's sort of a rush to that. And then after it's together, then it's a slight echo, and then maybe a little bit. It's a little bit off of Steve Reich and some of his things, you know. His music is a lot like that, but, you know, and then and so I would do is I would bring in any 2 loops that were about the climax together, and then fade them out while another one was being brought in. And what would happen? What did it sound like? You know, that kind of a thing. So that was sort of like a basic approach to rhythm. It wasn't a groove of any sort. It was really like kind of academic, and pure. But it was like, what happens if you do that? You know, because I was just trying to get down to the basics of like, what do you do? What can you do? That if you don't have harmony, how the hell are you going to do it? Where are you going to get an emotion, you know? So I think notice it in the movies. There's a lot about science fiction movies. But even, I don't know, I haven't seen Downton Abbey, so I don't know. But they're probably not that. But there are regular movies that sometimes use electronic sound to express an emotion or that go along with an emotion. And if you notice it, you go, oh yeah, that kind of sound does sound like this emotion.
You can get colors from these things, like tone colors, basically. Like that's the way I kind of like.
I'm afraid of the word tone.
Tone, yeah,
because that sounds like an individual pitch. Timbre, that's what I mean by timbre.
Yeah,
it's all about color. Yeah, but there's no color system.
No.
There's no
we don't have
fucking
that
color system yet, right? And somebody maybe 100 years from now will have one, you know.
Sure.
But there isn't one now, and there's no way to actually. There's no instrument on the market that deals exclusively with that.
Right.
You know, there's not. I mean, you look. I look at things all the time, like because another aspect of this is it's easier to do this in the studio.
Than to perform it.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah. Good.
I haven't a clue.
And who
yet.
would come?
Well, who cares? Well, that's just another day at work. Nobody at the gig. But how do you do that? How would you do that? DJs, musicians put down DJs a lot because they're on this meta level where they're not actually making the music, but they're using the music to make music. But there's something quite interesting I find, and kind of I have respect for it at the same, depending on what a DJ is doing. There's good DJs and bad DJs, of course. But there's something about that. It's a meta thing. It's not down to us jazz guys are like, oh, I hate those guys. They're just ripping off everything. They're sampling everything, and they're not really doing there's some of my friends that I don't even want to bring up the subject because they'll get angry. They have an emotional reaction about DJs. They have taken a lot of work away from us musicians. We used to play the whole wedding, and now we just play the cocktail music.
Spot, exactly.
And then the DJ takes over and plays, Aretha Franklin or some shit. And so, yes, I understand that. But there's some DJs that are really, really good, that tour internationally or whatever, that use on a meta level where they use music to combine it and create something on another level. It's kind of meta in that way, right? So there's kind of an interesting approach there that kind of I see a little bit of parallel to what I'm sort of interested in on that level.
Yeah.
So
well,
as a performance, for a performance, they're doing it. They're performing using electronic. Okay, it's Aretha Franklin or whatever, but they're performing it in some way on some meta level. So something like that, maybe.
You're very much. It sounds like you're just very much into exploration, like somebody looking for new territory. You're this adventurer in life. And
Musical astronaut of sorts.
Yeah, right.
yeah, exactly.
Ground control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ground control to Major John. So, John, because there is some electronic music going on now in movies, do you think ever about wanting to get into that? Writing
I would love to. A lot of it has to do with who you know, where you live. I live in the Northern Bay Area. I know there's Emeryville and Pixar, but really the industry is either in Nashville or in LA.
Okay.
And I did make some conscious choices to not live there in those places, at least in LA, because I didn't want to.
Yeah.
And that was hard on the career decision to make. I'm sure that. But that being said, I also have a certain kind of freedom that I don't think that people in LA do. They're on the clock, in demand. Do this, make it. Nope, that's wrong. Do this. And I have a little bit more. I prefer to have the freedom. I would love to write music for a film. I'm actually. That's one of my dreams is to work with a filmmaker and do something like that. I would love to do that.
Great. So. I love hearing about people's dreams, your dreams. And so I love just hearing that.
I think really that cool. What I would like to do is try to set myself, and that's where I'm at right now, is I'm trying to define my thing. I mean, I'm a chameleon. I'm a whore, back to that. And, I will do what I'm paid to do. Yeah. Of course. That's how I make my living doing that. But at some point, I also need to put my foot down and say, yeah, I could put a nice little pretty string quartet sounding thing to this. And I do that for people in my studio that want to sound, they want strings or they want a children's choir or something like. But what if I wrote music for your film that had no melodies on it, that it was timbrally oriented? What would that be? That's where I dream that I would just put my foot down and say, nope, I'm not going to write a string quartet. You're going to get, if you want me, this is what you're going to get. Neat. You're going to get this sound. So that means if you're looking for this sound, talk to me.
Yeah.
Sure
that kind of
that
you guys hear
too.
that?
Yeah. That's coming up. That's coming up.
I can't be alone.
No way.
Am I the only one?
Neat. Yeah. Well, there's so many things to talk about still. There was this one story that you told me once. So maybe that would be kind of a fun thing to talk about.
I said, I'm sorry. When you ever... Please, Jill, I'm sorry.
He's kidding. You clown. Okay, so let's tell us about what happened, your experience with, the substance and...
Oh, yeah,
That one.
that's a good story. Yeah. Well, this gets back to the process of improvisation, right?
Yes, exactly.
Where we were talking about one of the essential things is to look ahead.
Yes.
And to be present as you can and look ahead. When I was in a jazz fusion band when I was living in Mendo, right in the Golden Triangle, and I had infinite amounts of pot available to me at all times. And so really, that was a period of time where actually it was more normal for me to be stoned than to not be. Mm-hmm. I remember sometimes waking up going, or walking around going, oh, stoned again, like I really kind of got used to it a bit. Mm-hmm. And I would feel strongly that if I was going to play music, that I needed to have at least one toke of a joint before I sat down and played. Mm-hmm. I felt like I needed to get into that space. Right. It was like this thing that it would do obviously it alters you and you go, ooh, and then everything sounds kind of neat or whatever. Yeah. Or I don't know, but that's how I felt, mm-hmm. that it would kind of get me. I think it was a way to deal with fear, mm-hmm. a way to deal with being nervous, mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I'm in this space now, I'm in it. I can do this now, mm-hmm. So I remember playing in the town of Mendocino with this jazz fusion band, and we were in the middle of a song. I was stoned, and we were in the middle of the song, and I was taking a solo, and all of a sudden I went, oh my God, I know I'm playing an A minor 7 chord, but I have no idea what comes next or what just happened. I don't even know where the beat exactly is, and I'm on A minor 7. What am I doing? What's that? And I just holy shit, the music is continuing, and I don't know what to do, where I'm going. And I just got so into I guess being... what's the word? Just saturated with the moment that I didn't know how to get myself out of that and keep moving forward and to do something with it. I couldn't do anything. And I felt stupid. I felt like I'm a fucking idiot. I feel stupid. I don't know what I'm doing, and so that was it. After that, I was like, okay.
Well, so what happened with that?
I decided.
Were you in front? Were you on stage?
Yeah,
where you got?
Yeah.
So what was the?
It was. I don't remember the tune.
Was it like like a tiny little cafe or was
it the Seagull? It was a restaurant called the Seagull, which is now not there anymore. Unfortunately, it was a great venue, but it was just like a club. Mm-hmm. It was one of the two big clubs in Mendocino area. There's the Casper Inn, and then there was the Seagull in those days. And this was the mid '80s. And so, we had an audience, and it was a 7-piece band. I mean, there was a guitar, bass, drums, a saxophone, me, a vocalist. Nice. I think there was 2 horn players. Anyway, so, I had my solo. So somehow I survived A minor. Someone else took it and then went on. And in the meantime, I'm just comping like, oh, God, what the hell? What is going on? Time for, and I guess a break. It was time for a break, So I calmed myself. I made it through the night somehow, But I was severely chastened. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is not anything I wanted. This is not why I'm here. This is not. So the next, I was not interested anymore. It was like, I don't like this anymore.
Yeah.
I think it was probably the next day, I just stopped smoking.
Wow.
And I remember feeling high because all of a sudden the colors were brighter and things smelled nice. And it was because I was straight. And it was
interesting.
Oh, this is reality. It's pretty cool. It was almost like an acid trip I made. So maybe I'll get some acid. No. So anyway, then it was, and I really kind of then it just flipped me.
Yeah.
And I realized that this is a pretty cool thing going on here. Right. That can be pretty amazing. You know, there are a lot of reasons to get drunk or stoned, but to play music is not one. Yeah. And so I just decided to stop it, and it just opened up everything. I mean, and then I could think and be more involved in the process of creating music, which in itself is a much better high than the best weed. It's much deeper and more really, for me, more fun, way more fun. So, you know, I see sometimes younger, like I'm an old guy now, right? Son, why, when I was your age? And these young kids, and you know, it's more booze, and for that matter, even older people. You know, I see people that. There's one guy who shall remain nameless that he got too far into the drink, and he was non-functional at a gig, and people stopped calling him.
Wow.
Well, he can't. That's the worst thing, because this business is all word of mouth, right?
Yeah,
so if you say, "Did you hear about this X person? He was drunk at the gig." You will, and you're looking for whoever plays that instrument, another piano player, and you go, well, don't call him, because that's it. Yeah. That's really it. I mean, it's because this is very, very for as unfair as it may be, it's a very judgmental world when in the circles between musicians, where you want somebody, if you're going to hire somebody to play bass at your gig or something, you want somebody who's reliable, that plays well, and if they had a bad night, you're just not going to call them for a couple of months, and it's not fair. But that's so you
dependability is important,
and also ability to get along on the bandstand is really, really
well.
important.
That's another thing to bring up. I just wanted to kind of tell like a brief story of something that I witnessed at one thing that I was in the audience, and it was actually a jam, and there was somebody. Somebody that these people will go nameless, of course, but I was witness to some, arguing up on the stage where the bass player was yelling at the piano player, and then when he got off stage, he came over to me and started, just like totally trashing the piano player and just said, I don't know what this guy's, and I really found it. He's like, he doesn't know how to play jazz, and there was such a thing that this person in charge of the gig actually just said, look, I got to separate these two guys. Now the other guy was not being the piano player that was being bullied by this guy was not. He was totally keeping his cool. In this situation. I mean, that said a lot about his character. And anyway, but they separated him and the two of them. And I was asked to actually go up and sit in and play the piano for a good portion of this jam.
Oh, really?
Yes, which went fine, by the way. But
good.
Thank you, teacher.
You're welcome. So the bass player was nice to you then, huh?
Yes, the bass player was nice to him. I knew him from some other gigs, and I'm not exactly sure why he was like this, but it was I was shocked at not only his behavior on the bandstand, but then the level of just extreme emotional negativity as he was talking to me about this person. And,
they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, for
wow.
sure. You're not playing with that dude again.
And you're going
to spread that around.
You
too.
will, yes, like you are.
Exactly.
And it's kind of like I don't care how good a musician you are. If it's like, I really want to enjoy the people that I play with.
That's actually more important than anything.
Yeah, I want peace. I want peace. I want harmony and joy, and let's all, like what you were talking about, let's all be together and create this really cool thing, whatever that is.
Right. You want like you said it, harmony. You want art. You want art can be anything, I guess, but you want harmony. You want because you could see that on a stage. Yeah. And all right, it's entertainment too. you're not interested in looking at people having an argument because you're sitting with your girlfriend and you just had an argument earlier that day. I mean, you know,
Right.
whatever. You know, it's the last thing you want to see is drama.
Right.
It's really unprofessional.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate because I know some musicians like that have that kind of reputation too, and I don't call them.
Yeah.
And they may be really excellent players, but that's only part of the picture.
Yeah.
A lot of it is how well do you get along with everybody else, and you can't. You can maybe drive home and go, oh man, that guy was, not good or whatever. You can have your own opinion privately.
Yes,
and
of
that's
course.
fine. You know, you don't have to love everybody.
Right.
But if you're in a situation, you make the best of the situation and you make it as good as it will be.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, you have to. It's stupid not to. And I mean, this guy, why would he even tell you that? Because now you're not so much about the other piano player. You're thinking about this guy who is such a bad person to the piano player. It's more hurt the bass player than anybody.
Yes, exactly.
So musicians are neurotic. They're all various levels.
Yeah.
You're dealing with I was going to say especially singers. That's not fair, but. It's not. Maybe that's just personal experience.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, actually, there is a certain amount of neurosis that you do develop in yourself because you're doing something that's putting yourself out on the line, and so your insecurities, neuroses, or whatever you want to call it, are there too.
Yes.
And we all have them. We all have to deal with it.
Yeah.
We do.
And we're people like
I got them.
I got them. And so you know. And I think that it really for a person to decide to do this as a way of life, to be a musician. First, you're got to be a little bit off your rocker to begin with. I mean, why? What makes you? What is the process that makes you think you would want to do this? I mean, it's a bad business move. It's a terrible business decision, believe me. But I am not driving a BMW. But there's a whole lot of things that go into what makes a person decide to do that, and they bring that with them. And there's passion, so therefore there can be an inflammatory aspect to that passion.
Yeah.
And they can be impatient with their fellow musicians.
Yeah.
I've experienced that, yeah.
Yeah, and I really thought long and hard about it. What might have been going on with this guy that would cause him to be so upset? Because I have to say, try to be empathic and try to put myself in someone else's shoes instead of just judging them for their behavior.
Yeah.
And so I really got to thinking about it, and and this guy.
Well, we don't know.
Well, we don't need to. We never knew. We can only imagine.
Right,
but I
know.
had thoughts that helped me to be compassionate towards him. I'll just put it like that.
Gotcha.
We can make up our own stories, and we will never know. But I think if we were to actually ask the person and just get to know them, if I were to get to know this person better, I might find that out. But I probably won't go there. I probably will not go there because,
all right. Well, why?
you
don't have to. You're not
because
required.
I don't have to.
It's above your pay grade.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, you don't know. Maybe his mother just died. I mean, you don't know what happened to make a person do that.
Right. There's always a reason.
There is stuff that goes on. But, on the other hand, it doesn't really matter. We all have stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
So there's that too. Did you see ever read the article? It's in the New York Times. It's called I think it's called "The Pianist and the Red Lobster."
No.
It's about a story about I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a prodigious classical piano player in the 50s, and. It's a very interesting article, but the thing about it is that he had to have this little toy plastic red lobster with him.
Good for him.
It could be off stage.
I wish I had something
in a
like
box.
that.
But if he didn't know that red lobster is in the box,
Sure.
he couldn't play.
Wow.
He'd be playing. He even tried an experiment to tell a friend. put the box out there, but don't tell me if the lobster's in there or not, and what would happen. And it really, then he would be like, he'd be playing, and he's playing some really serious, Chopin or whatever. And in the back of his mind, he's like, I wonder if is lobster in there? It might be, but maybe not. But I'm playing okay, but maybe the lobster's not there, so maybe I'm going to make a mistake. And it would just be like he just tripped himself out like that.
Yeah.
But, the point being that it's a neurotic thing.
Yeah.
You were digging deep into a person to do music at that kind of a level. And a lot comes with that. There's a lot of baggage that comes with that. And if it helps him to have a frickin' Red Lobster in a box off stage, by God, give him the Red Lobster, for sure, That was read the article. If you just Googled The Pianist and the Red Lobster, it's a long article. It's very, very interesting on New York Times.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I played somewhere yesterday, and it was a wonderful house concert. And I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but let's just say that I enjoyed when I was playing, and then I ended up experiencing some of my own neuroses afterwards.
Afterwards?
Well, it was...
after the concert?
No, no. Well,
what do you mean?
Because, maybe I will tell a little bit of the
Too
story.
late.
Oh, my God.
You can edit it out later.
Yeah, I can edit it out. That's true. You're right. But I do like to take risks around my vulnerability. I will say that.
Good.
So, basically, listeners know, they've heard, if you've listened to any other of these podcasts, you know that I'm kind of a beginning player here. I've been just playing for about 6 years, playing jazz. I did play classical growing up, but and singing. And so I've been working hard to just get my chops together, and it's taken a long time to get 60 tunes so that I can go out and get a 3-hour gig. So anyway, but I was playing just a few tunes yesterday at this house concert, and there were 4 other people playing, and I was the opener. And and I knew that this person that was going after me was a phenomenal jazz pianist and singer, and has a couple of CDs out, and I had listened to her stuff, and I was really excited to hear her play. And after I played a couple of actually originals and just one standard, and as she was playing, I was standing in the back of the room, and I felt she played so beautifully, and I felt myself start to choke up, and I started to, literally, tears were coming down my eyes because I felt so bad about myself all of a sudden. And it was a horrible feeling inside, and it was kind of shocking to me that I was experiencing this. So, I'm noticing that I'm experiencing this, I'm observing it. I'm having an emotional reaction to observing it, and then I go, okay, can I let go of judging my emotion right now, or judging the judging? Letting go of judging the judging, and just be with it, and just stay with your breath, and just notice what's arising, let it pass by, but be with it. There's something
It's
here
real.
that needs healing, and just be with it. And, then, so I just kind of settled down instead of trying to control. I mean, it wasn't like out of control, but I was curious too, because it was kind of shocking. And now I just want to say I had not one bad feeling about this person. There was no sense of like, I don't want this person.
I hate that person.
Nothing negative about her.
That's actually pretty evolved.
So
that's pretty good.
Well, that is just, I actually, to be honest, I don't feel that way about people that I admire. What happens is that I shrink. I feel myself shrinking
Like
and going
being unworthy or
exactly undeserving, unworthy. And so anyway, then I ended up getting a seat just a few moments later, maybe 5 minutes passed, and then I sat down, and I decided to just feel my sitting bones on the chair and just relax and close my eyes and allow the music to just kind of come into me and just listen and just let go of the other stuff. It was kind of just already moving through me. And I actually just thoroughly enjoyed the rest of her pieces and was able to completely focus. That said, after the event was over, I I did notice that there were remnants of that, just that feeling of shame. And I just kind of wanted to, and unworthiness, kind of go back and revisit that, because there's something to learn from that. If I just ignore it and, I really believe in kind of rooting things out. Yes, I can look at it and let it go, but there's some kind of, experience or way of thinking that's causing me to have these feelings. And so actually, I will say a beautiful thing happened. I was able to talk to the two hosts afterwards, after everybody had left, and I brought this up with them. And, and I made sure, well, so there, then the woman, one of the artists, the host, his wife, said something so beautiful. At first she said, Jill, I think of people like flowers in a garden. And sometimes, a flower might see another flower that is, they think, oh my God, that flower is so beautiful and so much, more of this or that or whatever. And so the flower gets angry at the other flower and, upset, or says, oh, you shouldn't be like that. So I said, well, that's actually not kind of my reaction. That part, as the flower, is to be upset with the other person. But what happens is that I feel like I'm just shrinking. And I just go like deep within myself, and I just feel like I want to disappear, and I don't deserve to be here.
Who am I?
Yeah, all that stuff.
What right do I have to be here in the first place?
And so, oh my God, so she was listening with such focus and such compassion. And she said few words. And these next words are now like this thing that is like my mantra. And she, after hearing me say, well, that I don't have those negative feelings towards the person, but towards myself. And she said, well, when a person is like a flower, and that flower, and I was imagining a sunflower, the flower blossom just looks up to the sky and allows the sunlight to just stream into them. And when she said that, it's the imagery of, for me, it's like spirit coming into me, and that we're all allowing spirit to come into us and through us. And that's what, we are. I mean, and so that, for some reason, it's like, it's healing. It's a healing image, and to know that it's just spirit coming through us. And in a way, I mean, actually, I just, of course, have to, there's a saying in the Bhagavad Gita that, that if we think that we are the actor of what we do, like we actually take ownership of what we do instead of this energy coming through us.
That's a good point.
Then we will always be at the mercy of both praise and blame.
That's a good point.
So just letting go of ownership. It's like, yes, I am the vessel through which the stuff comes. So, but just to remember. And so anyway, that was like a really unexpected experience that I had last night. But
that's very interesting. Yeah, well, everybody has that.
So, whoa.
I say there's always somebody driving faster than you on the freeway.
Oh, yeah.
No matter how fast you're going, someone's going to zip right by you. Doesn't matter. There's always somebody faster on the freeway. Just give it up. But it's that's the beauty and the hard part about being an artist, to being expressing yourself, is that it's there. And so there's a vulnerability.
Yeah.
You are exposed in that way. And then if you make a judgment that somebody else is, quote, better, and it may be by that measure, by that measure that you're using, maybe they've been, they have more experience, and
a lot.
Well, what do you expect? They better be then. I remember once I went to a jam in the city. I was, somebody said there's this jam going down someplace along the bay on the Embarcadero. And so I went down, and there were a number of piano players there. And so I noticed that every time a piano player came up and played, and there was like kind of a backing band, and then it was like, I don't know why, but it was just a bunch of the people were pianists. Every next piano player who came up would play more notes faster than the one before him. And then one after that played. It was a pissing contest.
Oh, man.
All of a sudden, I was like, "What am I in the middle of? What the hell is going on here?" You know, they would just. It was like they had to play faster, and they were like, you know, it had. The thing is, it had nothing to do with beauty or art.
Yeah.
You know, and it had everything to do with a pissing contest.
Yeah.
And you know, look at. The Satie Xenopades, by Eric Satie, the Xenopades,
of course,
right?
Yes.
What was the point of that? I mean, it was a little bit of a middle finger to everybody else that he did this, because his point, I think, was to show how beauty can be in a simplicity and deal with this. You know, and so there is an inherent validity to everything that you do. You could come down, sit there and play a C chord, hold it, and then walk away, and there is something in that happened that is legit. Now, someone can come up after you and play giant steps, but so what?
That's a good one, too.
And then after that, they do...
And after that,
well, you need it.
I want to be happy.
And then I thought about you, but anyway. So there is an inherent legitimacy to, because human beings are inherently legitimate, and so just because somebody comes up with less experience and has a level of development that could be evaluated in comparison to another level of evaluation. I ain't no Chick Corea and never will be, and actually don't aspire to be. But I have to just be me. I just have to be me and what I did. And I've been in many situations where I would feel embarrassed at, like, maybe I wasn't in the greatest place in my mind, or wasn't paying attention, or whatever, and I just played shitty. And I was walk home, and I'm not happy with myself. I think it's one thing to be not happy with yourself when you know you could have done something that you wanted to do, because there you're just talking to yourself about your art and what you want. But then somebody else comes up and then blows you out of the water. That is something that really everyone has to deal with. That everyone has to deal with. Like, you have to not hate that, and you have to not hate yourself, and you have to see the value and the legitimacy in what you did. Stands on its own, regardless of whatever the hell happens after that. It's just, this is it. That is it. I think we also have everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be liked. Everyone wants to win. We all want to be on top. Our egos want to be like, I'm the best. Everybody wants that. And, I want to, and what was that? Was that how many trumpet players does it take to screw in a light bulb? 4, 1 to screw in the light bulb, and 3 to stand around going, I could have done that. It's funny that I use trumpet players, but anyway, no offense, guys. But that's part of the neuroses. We all deal with that. That is one of the worst things, and I think it keeps a lot of people. I have people who are students that come in and they play something, and what stops them is sometimes it's that they're playing I have a really nice piano in my studio, so they're playing it and they're going, I don't deserve to play this. This instrument is too good for me. I've had people literally say this, because they just in themselves don't have the belief and their intent. I think it's about your intent and where you're coming from and what you have to say inside you. And that's really all that frickin' matters. Okay, if you want to get signed by EMI, okay, you have to play more like Keith Jarrett or something like that. But all right, given that. But that doesn't mean that it's not legit what you're doing yourself. And really, even those, higher up guys that are really established and virtuosic, you could go to a concert and listen to those guys, and you can come out of that thinking, "What an asshole," or that was pretty egotistical, Or you could go out going, "Wow, I was really, really touched," and it really didn't matter how fast they could play diminished scale. It did not. It's really in the end, that's like pyrotechnics. People respond to that. I mean, sometimes if I'm playing a solo, I'll play something and I'll think to myself, "Oh my God, this is so happening. I am feeling it. I'm really doing it," and the solo's over and crickets, clinking glasses and conversations and then the next time I have a solo, it says, "I don't give a fuck. I'm just going to play arpeggios really fast, And everybody's, "Oh my God, that was fantastic." And it's like, what?
Yeah, totally.
People are not a good, reliable indicator.
No.
It's about entertainment too. There's that whole aspect of entertainment that actually many times has nothing to do with art. They, what do people want to hear? What do people, what makes people, this is always the question in my mind is like, what makes people respond? That's always kind of a mystery, what makes them react? Like, "That was incredible." And sometimes people come up to me and, my bass player friend, Tom, says he's got this great thing. If somebody comes up to him and he goes, and they say, "You were so good," he'll say, "Don't act so surprised." But, it's like you just don't know what's going on out there with people, maybe they heard something that reminded them of what their Aunt Betty did in something or other, they recognize that you quoted Furry Lease enough, or they have no idea what, you have no idea how, it's a really neat little mystery.
Unless they actually communicate it, directly, and they say, and
if they can.
If they can, yeah. Sometimes actually, because as a yoga teacher, I used to get that quite a bit. Actually, was like, "Oh my God, that was like an amazing class." And sometimes, and after having studied Marshall Rosenberg's work, Nonviolent Communication, and he talks about positive judgments as well as negative judgments, and that we can make observations about things, and if we can make an observation about something specific, when we are appreciating something that somebody has just done. So let me just, to make it clear, just go back to the example of being a yoga teacher and having somebody that was a great class. So I might, in order for me to feel more connected to that person and to be able to receive what they're saying instead of that positive judgment, of course they're well-meaning, but I might say, "I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Is there something specific that happened in the class that contributed to you feeling that way?" And they said, "Well, actually, you were playing this music when I was in child's pose, and it just, my whole body melted. It was the first time in weeks that I've been able to let go," or something like that. So then it's like there's this connection that happens because there's
a little bit beyond just a judgment. It's more like something what really happened. That's interesting.
Yeah. And that, in fact, did happen to me last night with this woman who was listening to my piece. And the interesting thing is oh my goodness, here we go.
Too late.
Story.
You can always edit it.
True. But so I had composed this new song, and it was born out of, I had... about 2 years ago, I had been visiting my parents in New York, and it was Christmas time, and I happened to see on the little table by the couch I was sitting on that there were some letters from my brother who had died like 30 years ago, and they were written to my father. And so I opened them up and read them. And they were longhand, and they were like a lot of pages. And I had been very close to my brother. He was like my best friend. He was the only person who lived here in California with me. We basically grew up together in San Francisco in our 20s. And he died of AIDS when he was 30, so that's a lot of years ago, 20-something. And so anyway, in the letter, my brother was telling my father that he was really devastated that I could no longer listen to him, that I told him that he was suffering from depression, and that I had told him that I can't handle listening to him all the time anymore, and that it was just too much for me. And so
You had said this to him.
I had said this. So he's telling my father in this letter. So I'm reading this.
Oh, wow.
And as I read that, I mean, I can't even tell you. It just felt like daggers. I just felt so much like it was. It was like burning inside of me that I was not able to be there for my brother like that. Because I mean, I just adored him and just think that he was in that pain.
Right.
So anyway, in that kind of pain, I literally just grabbed my journal and I wrote this thing. It just kind of came out, and you know, that was a couple of years ago. So I was working on writing some new songs, and I picked up this old journal for some inspiration, and I saw that, and it was basically lyrics. Mm-hmm. You know, even so, I put it to music, and last night I sang it for the first time, you know, publicly.
Wow, cool.
And so, yeah.
How did it go? So this
it
person
went
had a
really
reaction
well.
to that? She referred to it?
Yes. So she came up to me during intermission. And she put her hands on her heart and she goes, "Oh my God," she said, "Jill, that just totally got me right in the heart, because I have a brother who is suffering from severe depression, who has tried to kill himself, you know, several times, and I have not been able to talk to him anymore. I've been avoiding him, and I've been emailing him." And she said, "Now I know that, like, I need to find a way." And so, anyway, it was.
Your work is done here, right?
You know what?
That's a smashing success, I would say. I don't care what the next player played. That was pretty good.
So my technique may not be, you know, whatever, you know, but the fact that if I did something inside and I shared an experience, it was not easy to share that, because it's also a vulnerable thing. Like, I couldn't be there for my brother. It's like, you know, but it's a human thing, and
people relate to that.
Yeah.
That's real. That's really.
So anyway,
that's not technique oriented. That doesn't matter. Technique does not matter in a situation like that. That really trumps. Sorry to use that word. That really is much more important than any level of great technique. That's like watching fireworks, you know? Yeah. It's pyrotechnic. It's like, you know, you get there, and really, sometimes you look at fireworks and you go, wow, that's amazing. That's a flower inside a flower with a little, you know, you know, I love Disneyland or whatever, but it's like, that's it. I mean, it's just on that level of wow. All that shit is just on that level of wow, unless there's some meaning and reason for it to be there.
Right, yes.
I was talking to a lady who's a songwriter in the Bay Area, and she is putting out a CD of her album, of her songs. And one of her songs, I was talking about the sound of one of the songs and how it was mixed, and how much, you know, some of the details about how the song sounded. And one of the things that the guy who mixed the song did is he got enamored with, you know what a spring reverb is?
No.
It's that reverb that is in the old time guitar amps. Like if you put down the amp, you hear that,
oh yeah,
you know, that thing. That's a spring reverb. That's an effect, you know. So anyway, he stuck this reverb on the snare so that every time the snare drum hit really loud, you hear that boink thing from the spring reverb. And, you know, that's kind of retro and interesting.
Yeah.
It had absolutely fucking nothing to do with the song. And it actually distracted and wrecked the song. It's distracting. It's like, why is that there? Why is it there? There was no reason other than, look at this, you know, hey, spring reverb, you know. We actually got into a joke about it, you know. So, you just afraid of spring reverb, aren't you? I'm going to put it on everything. Oh, no. But, you know, it's that thing. It's like an effect for its own sake is like, it maybe gets your attention once. You're like, what was that, you know? But it does not affect you where you want to go up to the person with your hand over your heart saying, oh, my God, you know. And what would you rather, you know, in the end, walk away from having done, you know, playing the most beautiful scale in the world, or have something that's happened? Obviously, this is what we're in the business for.
Right.
That is why we're here. That's why we do this, you know. And whether or not you can play fast arpeggios is sort of like, it all has to be in service to. That doesn't mean don't practice your arpeggios.
Right, because having technical skill and mastery of your instrument and the other piece.
It's like,
is
exactly. That's why we're not conducting this interview in Spanish, because we wouldn't get very far. Donde es el baño? And that's about it. Thank you. Nice. Aquí. But, we could talk about these things because we have a good grasp of the language and the subtleties of it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it helps. But it has to be in service to, not just like because, what was that thing? I saw this thing on the interwebs. It was a short sentence like, I didn't like it, but it was like, it occurred to me that my something preferences were unduly influenced by, it was like big words to say the same damn thing, right? Yeah. And, it was 4 lines long, and it's like kind of funny, but, it's not in service to, maybe the best thing to say is, I didn't like it, as opposed to all the millions of words. Mm-hmm. So lots of times I hear that in music where it's like, yeah, blah, 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 and even the best, greatest musicians, some of their great records, sometimes they just leave me kind of like, well, yeah, it was interesting, like felt like I just got out of the circus or something, and saw the people jumping on the trapeze. Wow. Mm-hmm. But, walk away.
Mm-hmm. We want to feel something and be moved.
I think
in some
that's
way.
really, we want this. We want this. Mm-hmm. And it can be done elegantly. And, if you can do it with a Chopin nocturne and you've got the chops, fucking do it that way, But if you can do it with a Satie Janapati, it's just as legit.
Yeah,
it's as legit. So
music's an emotional vessel, and it's not like a sprint.
No, it's
where everyone's trying to beat
Yes.
everyone else in that whole thing. So I think. There's definitely musicians that fall on one side of that line or the other, though, There's definitely a divide there.
Well, that's the part of the neurosis.
Yeah, totally.
Ego is, people, you have to actually believe in you have to have a strong ego to live in this.
Yeah, you take hits, but
because you have to believe in what you're saying and what you're doing. So that means equals big ego, but that also means equal being an asshole at the bandstand to the piano player sometimes too. Sometimes it goes out of control, but it does go with the territory. That you just you have to have a strong ego in order to perform of some sort. You have to. You couldn't do it.
Yeah, not everyone's going to like it, so prepare.
You have to, right? Not
what do you mean by a strong ego again?
What's that?
What do you mean by a strong ego again?
Belief in yourself, like just the fact that you can. Well, there's people that are so shy you could even get a word out of them, right? Mm-hmm. They just and the purpose of music is expression, and I think that's the reason why I got into music in the first place. Is that my family of origin, emotion was not, it was the 50s and the 60s. And I never heard I love you when I was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I was until my 20s when I had to say it first, and then I got it back. And now my parents, or my mom now, gets it all the time, and it's wonderful. But, that was a time when I didn't see emotion between the two of them. It was all very intellectual. Both of my parents were college graduates. They're extremely smart. And but they lived on that thing. So I never had that. So when I found that I could do this thing with music that had a connection to emotions, it was like, oh yeah, that is something. It was really, really compelling. Yeah. It really meant something, and I think that is the reason why I chucked every other possibility to go, software programming or whatever. I could have been a lawyer, but this is for me. Yeah, it was just the experience of, and I think that's really, like I kind of mentioned earlier when I was in high school. playing the piano was the thing that turned me from being like kind of a nameless dweeb, yet one of many in the hallway, to people coming down, especially girls or people going, "Hey, Mr. Music Man," and all that. Like I had an identity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was known. I had this thing where I would like play the piano in the band shell after school, and I would play the hits of the day like. Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head or Strangers in the Night. And then the girls would come in from cheerleading practice and they'd all stand around the piano. And then I would ask them for their phone numbers. And I would translate the numbers of their phone number into degrees of the scale.
Oh, wow.
So that, 3532661 was
That's how you got people's number? That's
yes.
hilarious.
I was too shy to use any of them, but I probably could have sold them and made some money. But, and it's like, play mine. So anyway, I got a lot of positive reinforcement. So when my dad said to me, well, John, what do you want to be? You'd make a great lawyer. You sure do argue well. Computers or what else? Music, Dad, because it's what really spoke to. And then after I got into college and really learned a lot about the finer points of art and expression, it really kind of just that did it. That did it. And and the rest is history.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, is there anything else? We could keep on going. I mean, we could probably do another interview, but I think it's been 2 hours almost.
Yeah, we've been running a pretty good amount of time here, definitely. Let's see. Yeah, is there anything else? Anything you're up to these days? Any big
anything you want to plug?
Things coming up? Yeah, anything you want to talk about? You're up to?
I had a lady making a CD who she sang a song. I kid you not. She had over 200 takes of the song. She would not stop. It was, and it was a process. That's after a certain point. It sounds the same. But I think for her, the thing was not so much to get the perfect recording, but to get it, two things. First of all, perfectly, exactly how she envisions it to the micron, with no room for anything. And also, she just wanted to sing it a whole lot of times. She just had to sing it and 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 sing it. She just loved, and she would say, I love being in here, So I learned, okay, sure. I mean, I'm making money, so it's okay. I'm charging by the hour. Okay, sure. Yeah. At a certain point, I would just sort of like, what can I say? I how I feel. I really think you hit it. But, if you would like it, yes, ma'am, we'll do it again. That's fine. So, there's places where coaching is appropriate, or it's a tricky little thing, because, again, you're dealing with sensitive people. So it's a tricky thing. You don't want to, say, are you out of your friggin' mind? You don't want to say that. you just want to, okay. Because they're in a process. There's a reason why they're doing that, And she's very happy with the project. She's very, very happy.
Great.
I think she spent way more money than she should have, but she's happy with it. And that's a win then, okay.
Yes.
And thank you very much. Yeah. So it's a very interesting place to be like that. I had a guy come in, Jimmy Walker, who's a drummer, and I'm trying to remember. He played with somebody famous, and I completely can't remember who he is. But he put a record out, and he was really open to we would talk about. It was original songs, and I would say, what if you did this chord right here and did that, And he and then after a while he was like, why did you play a solo right here, And it was like, he really opened up and let me come in and contribute something.
Neat.
Nice. Yeah.
And it turned into, I think, nothing that he expected, but he was really thrilled with the result like that. So
Wow.
It's kind of an interesting little, you just never know. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah. Well, I have one last question. We always like to ask our guests, John, what is one of your earliest, really strong, visceral memories of listening to music? If you could close your eyes for a moment and kind of an early memory from listening to music.
It would be In Your Own Sweet Way, Dave Brubeck. that's on the it was a piano solo, and that really cocked my ear. And my parents were, they belonged to the Columbia Record Club, and they would get records every whatever, they got. And they started getting Dave Brubeck albums. And so they got one called Dave Brubeck's Greatest Hits, and it had Take 5 on it and Blue Rondo. Anyway, it had In Your Own Sweet Way. And it just opened my eyes and made me go, that's what piano improvisation sounds like. It was like that was like the quintessential first exposure to listening to a jazz improvisation. He played the song and then he went like into this whole place with it, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. Wow. And I just remember playing that again and again and again and again and again and again and again. So that really, I would say that was one of them. Like that. Switched on Bach is another one. That one really made me go, what? I would sit there with headphones. Oh, and speaking of sitting and listening to headphones, Emerson, Lake and Palmer's first album, the first one. Just Take a Pebble and all those things, and Keith Emerson, who I absolutely loved. And I had a really nice pair of Radio Shack realistic headphones, and I put them on and just would like listen to all those songs in there, and really loved ELP.
Neat.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, gosh, this has been a blast.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, John.
Got
for
me
coming
talking.
out. Yeah. I know. We've been going a while. This is awesome. Yeah, but again, thanks for coming out, John.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Delightful. And listeners, feel free to subscribe to our podcast on all of the great platforms, whether it be Spotify, iTunes.
We've got Apple Music, Stitcher.
Yes.
We're on Stitcher now. We're on TuneIn Radio, that app TuneIn.
Oh, I love TuneIn.
Yeah.
There's
So
a great ambient station on there
Okay.
too. Yeah. You can only get-
Yeah, so basically you just type in meaningful musical conversations and we
You'll
will
find it.
pop up.
Can I plug my website?
Oh, please.
Yeah, please.
JohnSimon.net.
John Simon, JOHN.
SIMON. JOHNSIMON.net.
And we will put a link there in the notes section.
There's if you click on the listen button, there's all kinds of music you can listen to, electronic as well as jazz, as well as music for my choir at church, if you were.
Right.
Fantastic.
There's all kinds of stuff in there.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, listeners, have a great rest of your day, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Take care. Bye-bye.